Fish on a RS farm doesn't grow. Well, in fact, this affects the entire farm's economics. So you plan for one thing, for example, that your fish will grow in 6 months, but in reality, it takes a year and a half. Do such situations happen? Yes, they really do happen. My name is Anton Pelcher. I'm an engineer. I've been building fish farms for over 10 years. Today, we're going to go over the top 7 reasons why fish on a RAS farm might not grow or grow much worse than planned. So make yourself comfortable and let's get started. Well, the first and probably the main reason why we might see poor fish growth is the feed. Indeed, for fish to grow well, we need special extruded feeds tailored to the specific type of fish. Otherwise, fish on a RAS farm will at best grow poorly and at worst not grow at all. Because extruded feeds are fully balanced nutrients processed through a special preparation technology which provide maximum fish growth and minimal waste on the filter. So sometimes the wrong type of feed is used. For example, low-quality local feeds. These could even be some kind of homemade feeds. As a rule, nothing good comes from such feeds except in rare cases. So just imagine, if, say, with European feeds for trout, you plan for a feed conversion ratio of 1.3, but with lower quality feeds, the feed conversion ratio ends up being, for example, 1.7. And it might seem that these feeds are a bit cheaper, but the overconsumption of feed during cultivation offsets your saving. But on top of that, not only did you not save any money on this feed, your fish might also grow worse and more slowly overall. That's one thing. And secondly, the fish will release a large amount of waste into the water because the feed is of low quality. Therefore, in reality, due to poor quality feed, we can end up not only with slow growth, but also with a high feed conversion ratio and a large amount of waste in the RAS system. That's why I would recommend experimenting with feed very carefully and cautiously. And in a well-tested business model, use only those feeds that have been used for years on RAS farm. By the way, which feeds are these? Well, these are Biomar, Raicio, Aller Aqua, Coppens, Gibak, Veronese, Leguasan. Fish in RAS grow well on them with the plant performance indicators, and they don't produce a lot of waste in the water. And the next reason is low temperature. The thing is, fish are cold-blooded organisms, and in order for them to gain weight optimally, they need the right water temperature. For example, for trout, it's 15 to 17 degrees. For sturgeon, it's 22 to 24. I talk about this a lot. And for African catfish, it's 26 to 28. If you maintain this optimal temperature, you can expect good, rapid fish growth according to your planned schedule. But if, for example, in your sturgeon system, instead of 22 degrees, you have 15 or 13, then don't expect to see any planned or even generally good growth rates. Because the lower the temperature, the slower the fish's metabolism becomes, it consumes less feed, and naturally, its growth also decreases. Poor quality of stocking material. Indeed, in order for us to grow marketable fish, we need to stock either fertilized eggs or fry. As a rule, stocking material comes in these two types. So one option is, you place the eggs in incubators and raise the fry yourself all the way to market size. The second option is, you buy ready fry and feed them until they reach market weight. So if the quality of the stocking material is poor, which does happen, you may either experience high fish mortality or end up with stunted fish. For example, a farm might take the best quality stocking material, the fastest growers, from a batch for themselves and sell off the ones that are not as good. This kind of thing happens all the time. And then you can't figure out why your fish aren't growing well. You start wondering if it's your feed that's the problem or if you're doing something wrong. But in reality, it's simply the quality of the stocking material. So keep in mind that you need to be very careful when choosing suppliers for your stocking material. Problems with RAS equipment operation. Yes, this is also one of the most serious reasons why fish may not grow well. Well, imagine that something on your farm isn't working properly in the filtration processes. Maybe the mechanical filtration, the drum filter isn't coping, or the biofilter hasn't started up yet, or there's something wrong with it in general. By the way, the most common problem is that you actually have a spike in ammonia or nitrites in the water, or a surge in suspended solids, and you can't feed the fish properly. You are forced to reduce the feeding rates. And since you've reduced them, you've lost a whole number of days, meaning a significant amount of time for the fish to grow. That's why problems in the operation of RAS are also one of the serious reasons why the fish don't grow as planned. Yes, fish in RAS can also get sick. This happens much less frequently than on a farm, in open grow-out systems, in cages, in open concrete channels, or anywhere else, like in ponds, for example. Fish in RAS are kept in a closed environment with controlled access. The water is constantly purified and disinfected. The water usually comes from underground sources. So the likelihood of disease is much, much lower. But if you don't follow safety requirements, if you supply untreated water, say from some lake, and let anyone and everyone wander around the farm as they please, if you use untested feed or diseased stocking material, then of course you can bring infection onto your farm, and no disinfection systems will save you then. That's why, to ensure your fish grow well, you naturally need to keep them in completely healthy condition. Otherwise, you'll be forced to stop feeding and treat your fish. Naturally, you'll lose a lot of time and the fish won't grow as they should. Incorrectly chosen feeding rates. For example, according to feed catalogs and all calculations, you need to feed the fish, say, at a certain stage 3% per day. Instead, you feed them 1.5 or 2%. Naturally, you're underfeeding the fish, and by underfeeding, you're not achieving their optimal growth characteristics. Therefore, for your fish to grow fully and with quality in an RAS farm, you need to strictly adhere to the feeding norm. You need to know these feeding norms in advance, calculate them ahead of time, and coordinate them with a specialist. And probably the final reason, and by the way, a very important one, is inflated expectation. In my calculations, I always try to rely on our existing farms and our clients who raise fish, on our fish farmers, and our acquaintances in the industry. I try to rely on this, constantly consult with specialists, and clarify this data. Only after that do I determine certain growth characteristics for a particular species. So very often I have encountered, unfortunately, either unchecked or deliberately inflated data, where fish supposedly show absolutely fantastic growth rates in RAS systems. Unfortunately, there is no such thing as fantasy. We have certain feeding standards, a specific feed conversion ratio at each stage of growth, and fish simply cannot grow beyond that. So keep in mind that inflated expectations can also be perceived as slow fish growth. In other words, the growth is actually normal, but you expected something different and included other figures in your business plan. Also, be very careful and double-check all the data you receive.